Okay. Holy shit. First off, I know a lot of you people are probably still waiting for your lunch to settle. Maybe some of you had a little drive in or a long flight in. And if this is a keynote and I'm supposed to get this thing started off right, what I want to do is start it off with a lot of energy. And the cool thing is there's a whole lot of energy in this room. Problem is, it's all up here and you are all sitting down there. So if you'll indulge me for just a minute, let's get this thing started right. Everybody stand up for just a minute. If you can't stand up, at least perk up. Okay, put your hands up in the air. And when you take a slow, deep breath in and pull in all the positive energy you got sitting around you. When you let out, let go of all the excess BS energy, all the negative energy that's hanging in there. One more time, nice deep breath in. Okay. Now, are you ready? Okay. Are you ready? Okay, that's better. I'll take what I can get. I'm going to start with a very simple question. What's thriving in your organization? Culture or toxic culture? Every day, organizations of all sizes deal with toxic culture. But it's only when they're faced with significant adversity that the true toxicity is discovered. And by then, it's too late. And so I have a cautionary tale that I want to share with you about just that. And over the years, I've developed a foolproof methodology. I call it the cornerstones of culture to help you safeguard against the same thing. But before we get started, we have a pop quiz. Who knows who the most successful pirate in all of history is? Who? Nothing? Blackbeard, he was very successful right up until they keel-hauled him. Who? Okay, fine. Who? Johnny Depp. You mean Jack Sparrow. However, he's not an actual pirate, but he was very successful. Who is the least successful pirate in all of history? Anybody know? Nobody? And so, some people at the previous event said the same thing, Jack Sparrow, which he could be both the most successful and the least successful at the same time. So I'm going to tell you, but we're going to have like a pirate face-off. We're going to have a who's who of pirates. In this corner, we have, hailing from Canton, China, weighing in 110 pounds, Ching Shih. She started her early career as a prostitute. No money. She married into money. In fact, she had prenuptials laid out that said that she was basically had her own dowry. She was going to get a big chunk of this guy's property and his money just to marry him, so that she knew she was going to be set up. When he had an untimely death, she ended up with 2,000 ships and 70,000 pirates under her command. She had basically incorporated all commerce in the South China Seas. She instituted a code of law and a code of ethics for pirates. And you hear about it in stories. You see it on like Pirates of the Caribbean. They allude to it and they talk about honor among thieves and pirates code. But she actually instilled this code of ethics. And it included things like how you would handle prisoners. If they were women and they were pretty, they could be held for ransom, but they were still not to be molested or damaged or hurt in any way. If they weren't pretty, they were to be set free. If you were running a ship and you took a big prize and you didn't tie the right amount to her and to the corporation, as it were, you would be killed on the spot. So these codes that she put in place permeated throughout history and throughout time. She also fended off a coup. When her husband died, a lot of the other pirates in the fleet said, hey, we're not going to put up with her being in charge. We're not going to let it fall to her. We are going to decide. She got wind of it, and all of those that were loyal to her, which was the vast majority of this entire fleet, took out these infiltrators. They were all killed. Later, when the new Chinese emperor said, hey, we're going to put an end to piracy, she already had a plan in place. She negotiated immunity for everybody that was a pirate in her group, all they had to do was set down their swords, get off the ships, and go back to being whoever they used to be. That's all they had to do. She lived to a ripe old age of 69. She did run a brothel and gambling house, and at 69 was probably a pretty good old age, back in the 1600s. Now, in this corner, hailing from Dundee, Scotland, weighing in at 190 pounds, we have William Kidd, AKA, anybody? Captain Kidd, the famous Captain Kidd. How did he get his start? Well, he mutinied to get his first commission on a ship. Then he went to the government in London and said, I want to go take care of and find all the pirates and rid the world of pirates. Give me a ship, give me a crew, give me some money. So they did. It turns out because he was really not too discerning, the vast majority of his crew were criminals and former pirates themselves. And nothing could go wrong here, right? Well, so it turns out he had an opportunity to take a very large ship, a prize. And he said, we can't do that because we're privateers. There are only certain ships that we can attack, and that's not one of them. A mutiny ensued. He ended up hitting one of the crew members over the head with a big brass lantern. The guy woke up the next day dead. When news got back to London, they said, you're a murderer. When he took the wrong ship under the same pressure of mutiny, the word got back to London, and they said, you're a pirate. So when he got back, he was tried and convicted as a pirate. And just like you would expect, they're going to hang him. Unfortunately, the rope broke. He fell to the ground. Now, back in the day, it was common that if that happened, they would say, you know what? You've been hung. It's a proper punishment. You can go. But the government said, no, we got to set an example of this guy. So they hung him twice. After they hung him, they washed him, tarred him, feathered him, and hung him in a gibbet. That's a big metal frame out over top of what's the drink in London? The Tower in London, for 3 years as an example. So when you look at these two people and you say, how did they end up in this place in history? And the first thing you think is it education? She had no education, no formal education whatsoever, right? Raised in a brothel, basically. He comes from some of the best education all of the United Kingdom and London can afford. Is it about money? Well, yeah, she came into some money, but she had a pretty considerable fleet long before she met her husband. William Kidd, on the other hand, he got it handed to him, right? So he had a ship, he had money, he had crew. Was it opportunity? She's got the entire South China Sea open to her. He has the entire Atlantic, everything on the west side of Europe, everything on the west side of Africa, everything on the east side of South America, everything on the east side of North America. So we're going to get back to these folks in a little bit. I'm going to start to tell you the story that I came here to tell you. Some years back, I was invited to dinner by my brother to meet a gentleman who had an MSP that was trying to get it to the next level. And it was nice because Laura and I, my wife, we went to meet with him and his wife and have dinner. And this is someone I had been acquainted with, but never formally met. A few years before, he had approached Carl and myself and said, hey, help me get my service delivery to the next level. And it turned out he couldn't quite afford what we were setting out for the proposition. And so I finally get to meet him. And over dinner, talking with him, I realized this guy is, to me, he was, I don't know how else to put it other than inspiring. And it's not easy for me to be inspired by other people just talking to them about their business. But this guy had an energy. He's probably a dozen years younger than me. And he had this fantastic energy that I wanted to tap into. And it was really kind of a nice breath of fresh air. And I thought, wow, I'd really like to work for this guy and help him get to the next level. But I'm not really sure about it. In fact, he offered me a job and said, come to work for me. I'll give you whatever you want. I'll give you whatever title you want and help me get my business to the next level. And help me with the service delivery process and all these other things. And I said, yeah, I just don't think that it's the right thing for me to do. Mostly because I don't know what I don't know. In the last few years, I don't know why you've not been able to get your business to the next level and turn around, either through coaching or whatever process. So what's going on inside your organization? Also, I'm not really certain internally that I have what it takes, although I'm very bold and I'm very sure of myself. Maybe I don't have what it takes to help you get your organization to the next level. And the last thing I want to do is come on board and actually end up dragging you down. So I have my internal reservations, my external reservations. And so he said, how about this? How about you give me an evaluation of my organization and at least tell me what you see, what we can do, what we can change, how we can get to the next level. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a business analysis. I'm going to come to your company. I'm going to hang out for a week. We're going to do employee assessments. We're going to do surveys. We're going to take a look at your finances. We're going to take a look at your service delivery process. We're going to talk to all your employees. We're going to sneeze in a minute. No, I'll get there. So I said, we're going to have lunch every day. We're going to talk about key elements that we need to talk about. And the first day, on Monday, we go to lunch. And I said, here's where we start. Tell me what your vision for this organization is. And he said, well, that's easy. It's to create raving clients. And I said, okay, to me, that sounds a bit more like a mission, not a vision. And he said, well, I've always seen them as the same, vision and mission. Everybody kind of uses them interchangeably. And I said, well, I don't. And I have a very distinct way of explaining the difference between the two. So he said, go ahead. I said, okay. Vision, in a nutshell, is what the world would look like if you are successful at the endeavor that you're taking on with this organization, with this business. And a perfect example is Magellan. Magellan wanted to find, he knew there was a new path, a new way to get around the Horn of South America that would shorten travel by months, weeks certainly, but up to months in the wintertime. So he goes to the aristocracy of London and says, give me money, give me a ship. I'll go find this and you guys get the credit, but I get to go be the explorer and do this thing. And so they did. And the reason is you have to be able to tell a compelling story and paint an enticing picture. And if you can, that vision is what gets you through the hard times. So when they're lost at sea or they're thrown off course by a storm and they say, what are we doing here? He pulls out the map and he points to it and says, we're on our way somewhere. We're on our way to do a thing, right? That's what we set out to do. And everybody remembers that and then they get back to it. So to me, that's what vision is. What does the world look like if we're successful at what we're doing? Another good example, by the way, is Bill Gates. Anybody remember what his original vision for Microsoft was? A PC on every desk, right? We've got them in our pockets. You have more computers in your life than you've ever had before. That was a vision, right? That was a big vision. So he said, okay, I'll work on that. And I said, I'll help you work on that. So I said, okay, Tuesday we go to lunch. And I said, okay, next question. What is your mission? Now, I think I already know what you're going to say because you already told me yesterday. It's to create raving clients. And I said, no problem. I can get on board with that, right? The mission is basically your 20-mile march. It's what you're out to do every day that makes the vision come true. And if creating raving clients is it, if that says a lot, really, if you think about it. You peel back all the layers of that. It's really a wonderful statement. So I said, okay, great, no problem. So the next day, Wednesday, let's talk about the values of the organization. Core values that you will hire and fire on, meaning right, if somebody doesn't exhibit these values or they break these values, they got to go. And he said, well, I don't have a lot of values laid out like that. I mean, we're kind of a small company. I've really not thought about it. And I said, well, but they exist. You just haven't pinpointed them. And he said, well, one thing I know for sure, the people in my organization I treat like family. They are like family to me, and that matters to me. And I said, well, I don't know exactly how to translate that into specific values, but that is a value that's important. And so we'll build on that. We'll work with that. And then I said, what's the human element? This is Thursday at lunch. And he says, well, that's easy, right? We've got a really good group of people that meld together well. The company's about a dozen people. And he said, everybody that we add to the organization, the leadership has to interview them. I interview them. We have to like them, and we have to, because we're basically adding members to our family. That's how I see it. And so they've got to be really geeky. Our techs here have more certifications than almost any per capita. It's just ridiculous how many they have. We're very strict about it. So they've got to be really into tech, and they got to be really geeky. So I said, okay, no problem. We can roll with this. So I went and said, on Friday, here's your summary. Here's your basic thing. You need to refine your client base. You need to refine your people process. You need to get your service delivery in order. And he said, I got one other thing. I need you to evaluate over time what if the service manager can become the general manager. Basically, can that person fit into that role? And I said, okay, I'm going to come on board for a limited consulting. I'm going to help you do those things very specifically. So we laid them out. We knew what we were going to do. We get to work. The first thing we do, we refine the client base. We trim it down very simply by saying, if you're below a certain revenue, you're out of here. We found somebody local, we interviewed them, and we passed all of those clients on to them. I started teaching his team my agile service delivery methodology. I started working with and mentoring the service manager. And we started working on the people process, which already was pretty good, but we stepped it up. We did employee profiles before we hired them. We did interviews with the leadership, but we actually started filtering for, not just hoping for, the very specific traits that these techs would have. They're really geeky. They really like tech. They can communicate well, all of these things. But they also had to go to lunch with the rest of the tech team in a big group. And if everybody in the team thought that they would fit in, they would get in. If they didn't, they wouldn't. That's how tight it was. Everything's going along fine, although there are a few hiccups here and there. But the biggest hiccup I came across was one day, the owner, Tony, he had to kind of talk me down I was really kind of irate because I had an employee come to me. He wasn't willing to go to the service manager. He didn't believe that the service manager, Drake, was going to hear what he had to say. And what he had to say was, I'm at a client's office, and the weirdest thing happens. The manager there, she asked me to come into her office, and she closed the door. And she said, sit down. And then she started to ask me, why are you late? And she began to grill him about why he was late. And he said, well, I was, traffic. I got here as soon as I can or could. And she said, well, you're supposed to be here at like 9 o'clock. He said, well, no, our policy is I'm going to be there first thing in the morning. I'm going to get there as quickly as I can. It may be 9 o'clock. It may be a little after. She said, no, you were supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. Is it acceptable for you to be late? Should you keep your job? And that was the line of questioning she had for him. And he was really shaken up. So she got done grilling him. He went and finished his work there, came back, talked to me, and I said, okay, I'll sort this out. So I went to Drake and said, Drake, we got to have a conversation. Let's go talk in Tony's office. And I said, we have a problem with a client. We have a client who decided that it was okay to have a closed-door meeting with one of our employees, and it was one-on-one. First off, that's not good, especially if it's male-female. Nobody knows what happens. Nobody knows what was said for real. But we can't have our employees having closed-door conversations with our clients, with our employees. He said, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I said, well, okay, let's look at this a different way. If he gets fired tomorrow or loses his, quits, we're going to have a lawsuit on our hands because he's going to come along and say, we let him, our HR policy allowed him to go have a closed door meeting with a client who is not his employer, asking him to be accountable to another company. And that's a bit of a problem with HR. And he said, yeah, I don't think that's a big problem. So I was like, okay. So I said to Tony, this guy's got to take some classes on ethics or I don't know what, but he needs some more leadership skills because that kind of thinking doesn't work, especially when our biggest thing is that we take care of our employees. And the last thing you're going to do is allow a client to have a closed door meeting like that. Again, setting aside the legalities of what HR is going to do with this. And I had many instances like that with this particular service manager along the way. And we got to the end of pretty close to the end of the year. We locked in 3 quarters. We were a month into the 4th quarter. And I went to Tony and I said, hey, I think I'm kind of done here. We got 3 quarters in the black. We're going to have a 4th quarter in the black. No problem. Service delivery process is completely instilled. Everybody's on board. I've done everything I can to mentor this guy, but he's not the right guy. He's just not the one. He needs a lot more leadership skills. He needs a lot more experience. And maybe he'll come along, but I got to tell you right now, I would not have him in the role he's in this organization. And I don't know that I would employ him in my company. And that's after working with him for 6 or 8 months, 8 months, 9 months. So I think I'm done here. And he said, okay, great. So write me a letter of recommendation. I'm going to go start looking for the next thing, right? Because I've only got 60 days left and the year's over. Less than 48 hours later, I got a call that he had died in a accident, a dive accident, at the age of 36. What happened immediately after that was the contingency protocol kicked in. His finances became under probate, so did the entire organization. He had indicated that his aunt would come down from Philadelphia and she would run the organization. And the intention was that that business would continue on. Well, when she got down there, we had lunch. And the first thing she said was, I'm too old for this shit. I never thought that my nephew would die at 36 and that I'd have to step in and take over this company. And I said, okay, well, you have other problems. You have a problem with this particular employee. And I explained to her where I was at. And she said, can you take over the company? I said, well, you have a problem because that person is who most of the team is endeared to, not me. And if I'm going to take over the company, I'm going to fire him. I will not work with him. And so it's probably not the best thing for this team and the company right now. It's probably better that you go on with the team and that service manager and they're all melded together. Because remember, I wasn't supposed to be here long term. I was not going to be here long term. So they're not endeared to me. And she said, okay, we'll sort it out. Drake, the service manager, calls me a few days later and he said, I'm thinking on starting a new business. I've already registered a domain name and taking the best techs and the best clients with me. And I said, what are you talking about? This isn't your company. These aren't your clients. These aren't your employees. Why would you do that? And he said, well, I would hate to see that go by the wayside. And I said, well, but this isn't yours. This belongs to his wife and his family. If they sell the organization, they give it away, it doesn't matter. That's not the right thing to do. And a few more conversations later, he changed his mind, or at least backed off of it. And it indicated to me, again, solidified what I had thought about this person, what I felt about this person, what I suspected about this person. And they put the company up for sale. A new company came in and bought it. They thought they were buying the processes and the team and everything else. And just before they signed all the paperwork, before they got started on contracts and agreements, Drake, the service manager, went to the lead tech and said, you should go to XYZ Co., our biggest client, ask them if they want to hire you away from us, because this is all going to go downhill and you're not going to have a job, and you should just go work for our biggest client. And he did. The lead tech just left. Everybody else signed a 6-month agreement saying that they would stay on with the new organization for at least 6 months. And the deal went through. At the end of 6 months, none of the original employees that were techs at the original organization were there. They got their bonus, their signing bonus, and they left. They didn't want to be there, didn't want to be part of it, don't know, but they were gone. And everything about that organization was now gone. It was like sand through your fingers. Looking back, what did we do right? We at least tried to set out a vision, but we had at least a good mission that everybody was endeared to and they liked, and they could see themselves doing that every day, just create raving clients. We had a good people process. We had a good human element, the people that make up the organization. And what did we do wrong? Well, I think it's a failure on my part. I didn't push hard enough on the vision, because it's something that lasts. Even if the organization had been bought, many small companies, if they don't have a vision, they meet up with another company who has a good culture, vision, and mission and values, tend to adopt those. And it's kind of like two pirate ships. They go, hey, you got the better captain, you got the better program. I want to get on board with you. I want to sail with you. I see your vision and I want to be part of that. We also failed on the values. Had I pushed harder at that, values are this thing that might have pushed this person, Drake, down and out of the organization over time, right? To me, it's the saving grace that could have been in place. When I think about it, I realized that there is an impasse to getting your organization to the next level. For the last dozen years, I've coached clients all over the world. I wrote a book called Getting to the Next Level. I'm writing a book called The Culture Imperative. And I know, I have seen it, that without defining your mission, your vision, your values, the human element, getting the culture right, it's an impasse to getting to the next level. I also realized that a lot of the books that I read, Jim Collins, Good to Great, Daniel Pink, Drive, Ram Charan and Larry Bossidy wrote a book called Execution. All of these authors talk about getting the culture and the values and the vision first, getting them right first, and then getting a bunch of people that adhere, that buy into that agree with that. Vision is what couples your employees to a purpose. It's what makes them feel like what they do in the world matters. Right? That's the first cornerstone. The second one is the mission. Again, it's the 20-mile march. It's what makes your employees feel like that they're part of something, that the things that they do are leading somewhere. It makes the team cohesive and strong. Values. Values determine who gets into the organization, who doesn't, who gets to stay, and who has to go. And then the human element. This is the most valuable resource you have, bar none. The people that make your company come alive, that believe in the values, adhere to them, walk the mission every day, the 20 miles, see the vision and want to be part of it. That comes from those unique people that you hire. Back to our pirates. The whole reason I started with that story is it's kind of this juxtaposition. It doesn't matter how large your organization is, and it doesn't matter whether you're out to save the world or take over the world. culture matters. What set these two organizations apart, very simply, was culture at the end of the day. She had a culture that she instilled and held more valuable than anything else. And it kept her through her organization alive through a mutiny and many more after that. And for him, his life was chaos. It was just about mutiny. There was no culture. The key thing to take away is very simply this. Figure out the vision, the mission, the values, the human element. And then maybe you can build something inspiring, maybe something bigger than you. But one way or the other, you will in fact have what it takes to break through that impasse I talk about to getting to the next level. So very simply, the culture imperative is this. Get it right, and massive, if not stratospheric success is possible. Get it wrong, and nothing less than the entire organization is at stake. Thank you very much for listening.